What is going on? It is Daniel with Cuervo ATV. Today we are talking about listed compression ratios versus actual compression ratios and how increasing the stroke on an engine is going to change the stated compression ratio on a piston. So a few things to go over. Basically, the quick of it is what we're talking about is, say if we look at this piston here, a CPM 1086, that is listed for 10.75 compression on a 105.5 bore, and see where it says 84 millimeter stroke. Well, that part is important, and that is what we are talking about today. So to talk about compression ratio first and how it's calculated, quick overview of what that is. So first thing that gets measured is the volume. If you fill this level of fluid, that volume. Use a glass plate with a hole in it and fill it up with fluid, measure that volume. So you can also look in the book, and this is for the newer model, but it says combustion chamber volume 57.6 to 61.2. Now that is a pretty wide range, and that is one of the reasons why we CNC the chambers of all our 2015 and above single exhaust outlet heads, is to make sure that that volume is consistent across all of our heads. So that volume gets measured, the thickness of the gasket, that area gets measured, the height of the piston, how high it sits in the bore, that area gets measured, as well as on the piston itself has a few different specs. CP includes these specs here, where we have a dish dome volume. So this one here is a dish, this one here is a dome. That means the area, including the valve pockets, of what that volume is. And the other one here is top land volume. So that is the volume of air that is above the top ring. Basically from here up, how much volume is there, because that is a notable difference. And if we look at this spec sheet, 0.750 is actually different than this spec sheet of 0.690. So small difference there. So here's where we're getting at. Basically, if you take your 10.75 compression piston and you put this on the 84 millimeter stroke, the compression ratio should come very close to 10.75 to 1. Now, I did some quick math here, and this is on the so this is on the 734 piston. This is on this piston. Okay, so if we look at that, kind of explain what I did. We have the head, which is the CC of the chamber. So I have 62 down to 58 as a range. Speaking on that real quick, whoever's doing the head, some people like to open up the chamber or blend out the from the intake valve to get some more airflow there. That does affect your chamber volume, and it will increase. If you mill the cylinder head, if you have to machine it, if it gets damaged, or if you mill it, you can increase compression. So if you mill it, this number is going to go down. Going on from there, we have 40 thou gasket thickness. This is a gasket thickness I use for the SCE gaskets. This number will be lower with a Cometic, and this will drop quite a bit as well. So compression will go up with a Cometic gasket because they are 27 thou. So let me get some coffee. All right. So we have gasket thickness, we have the dish number, which is off of the spec sheet. And we have the ring area. So calculating this out, we end up with 74.75 as a total dish volume, or total volume. So how I go from 74.75 to 9.8 compression ratio is I do this. We do 734 cc, because that's what that piston is on stock stroke, divided by 74.75. So 9.819. Some of these numbers I only did single digit, some are more precise. But we divide the cc size by the engine cc size by the actual cc size of the combustion area volume. So that is everything above, when the piston's at top dead center, all the volume added together above the top ring. So if we look at this number and we look at a 60 cc head volume, which is in the middle of the range, we end up with 72.75, and that ends up being a 10.08 compression ratio. If we look at a 58, which say your casting on your head's a little bit smaller than normal, for whatever reason, there's a lot of variation in manufacturing. Say you milled the head a little bit, it would go up to 10.37 compression. So 10.75, that would be an accurate number if you used a 20 thousandths head gasket. And they are going to err on the side of caution, meaning taking your smallest chamber volume and saying, okay, that will be the most compression ratio where that would be, which gets you to about 10.75. So it is good to check. You could put two motors together, say they're both stock heads, but one could be 62, one could be 58, and you'll have quite a bit of difference, a 1.5 difference of compression. So going on from there, if we look at our 778, so right here I have 778 cc. So if we calculate 778 divided by 74.75, it gives us 10.40. If we do 778 cc divided by 72.75, that gives us 10.69. And last here, 11.0. So this dish piston, if you have a 5mm stroker, it's going to be at least 11 compression ratio, if not higher, on the smaller chamber size, and it can change from there. So it's good that it starts at a 10.75 as a shelf piston for that 734 cc, but adding that stroke is adding 0.6 of compression. So you do need to be aware of that, because if we go down here and we look at, so this is the 12-to-1 piston. Let's see, the M1054, it's listed at 12.5. If we look at the numbers for 12.5, on the low side, 62 chamber, big chamber, we're 12.0. On the small side, we're 12.65. Some guys will still think 12.5 compression. is pump gas friendly. I don't consider it. Not on this engine. On some engines, yes, not on the 700. Pump gas meaning 91, 92 octane. If you put the engine under load out in the dunes, you'll see detonation way sooner than if you're riding around in the dirt where it never gets load. Sometimes out on the street too, you don't get very much load in those instances out on the flat compared to where you do in the sand. So most of my experience is in the sand. Obviously ride trails and stuff too, but in the sand produces way more load, way more heat than everything else. So we see a lot of stuff sooner than later. So if we come down here and look at 778, so 778 divided by your 60.97. So this piston on the lowest compression is going to be 12.76. In the middle, 13.19. On the high side, 13.65. So you start approaching 14-to-1 actual compression on this relatively flat piston when you put stroke on it. So can you get that piston up to 14-to-1? It's potential. If you have a small chamber and you run a thin gasket and you run the piston at 0 deck, so the piston's the flat, this area here of the piston's coming all the way up to the flat of the cylinder, and you mill the cylinder head, which I don't advise to do, you can make more compression on that particular piston. You could probably put it in the 14 plus range. But if you put this together as a 778 and you try to run it on pump gas, sitting at 12.7 at your most hopeful lowest compression, then you are pushing it way beyond. So I see a lot of retailers selling this piston with the 5 mil and they post it as pump gas friendly, and it is not, because we're adding compression due to the CC size. So something to consider. There's always more to it. That's why I recommend always talking to an engine builder. If you don't give us a call, give another builder a call so they can set you right, not just blindly ordering parts and coming up with something that doesn't work well together. So this is somewhat of the reason why I don't really run a like a purchase website where you can go to and buy parts. I prefer to talk to the customers. A lot of this stuff is specialized. That's race parts. So a lot of retailers are selling race parts that have no idea what they're doing. They don't really care. They don't care what happens to that customer that is buying those parts. Now, if they're going to shops, okay, obviously it all comes back to really the consumer who's buying the part. It's really their responsibility to take the necessary steps to get the right information. So there you have it. Quick overview. Don't take these particular numbers as gospel, because every combination is going to be a little bit different. Every piston is going to be a little bit different. You need to verify your own numbers, especially on pump gas, or if you're trying to get the most out of your engine combination and really want to push it and know the actual compression ratio that you're at. These extra steps will get you to where you want to be and safely for the fuel that you're running. So that is it for today. I hope I didn't lose too many people off of this. Might not apply to many people, but just remember, first of all, don't buy those hot rods cranks. Second of all, if you do have one, it is affecting your compression ratio. And at the end of that, this piston here, that is why that is sitting here, because this customer had brought a bike that he bought that somebody else put together, had it on pump gas, blew the head gasket, a little bit of detonation damage, and it is all because that compression is too high for the 5 mil. So that is it, guys. We will talk to you on the next one.